Dear guests, I warmly welcome you to our panel of lectures, which we entitled New Technologies, New Perspectives. With us are four distinguished, let me show you them, four distinguished professors, all PhDs, and all very capable of giving us proper lectures about the questions of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and also what this Speculum Artium Festival is all about, how this can be used then in design and artistic way of creation. So since the artificial intelligence is quite a big topic in latest years, also now in artistic circles, we believe that this is an appropriate moment to have a discussion like this also on this festival, and we are pretty sure that our guests will provide you with valuable information and maybe also raise some questions that we all as a society will have to answer sooner or later. So, if I start with the ladies' part of today's discussion panel, on my left, on your right, Dr. Eszter Polonyi from the University of Nova Gorica, and Professor Dr. Narvika Bovcon, Faculty for Computer Engineering from the University of Ljubljana, and Dr. Aleš Vaupotič from the University of Nova Gorica, and Dr. Uroš Ocepek, professor at the secondary vocational school from Trbovlje, and also last year amongst 50 best teachers in the world on official. So please let us greet all of our discussion panelists with big applause before they start. After their lectures, there will also be a short discussion where we will put some lines, and of course you are all invited then to also ask questions. Now we can either do that after each of the lecture, or we can do it on the end. If there will be specific question for specific lecturer, please raise your hands after he finishes. Otherwise, we can do the discussion later. Thank you all for coming here, and I'm looking forward to very interesting discussion and interesting new things, because this is also Speculum Artium, to discover new dimensions, to learn something new. Enjoy it. My talk will actually make a bridge from the moment of today to the beginnings of new media art. I will present a work of Srečo Dragan, new media artist, Slovenian new media artist, who started working in the 60s, and last year he had his interactive augmented reality installation, brain-computer interface installation here at Speculum Artium. So it will be an example of this six decades span. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In this presentation, we hypothesize that new media artworks can be described using the theory of video games, as was developed by Alexander Galloway in his book Gaming Essays on Algorithmic Culture in 2006, where he proposes two axes for the video game action analysis: diegetic or non-diegetic actions that are performed by the player or the machine, forming thus four quadrants for four action types. Second, we will consider how Srečo Dragan presented his oeuvre in new media art at his retrospective exhibitions, pointing out his invention of concept boards for preserving the artworks in unstable media. Third, we will discuss the approach that identifies recurrent methods and motives in the artist's work and combine it with Galloway's action types in gaming.
Finally, we will propose a viable solution that offers the script for recreation of an unstable media artwork by describing its logic, characteristics, functions, and attributes on various levels: conceptual, contextual, algorithmic, technological, historical. Using Srečo Dragan survey as a case study, we will investigate whether Galloway's theory of gaming is applicable to the analysis of media artworks. Since these also run on computers, involve the participants in algorithmic processes, and require various types of actions from both the operator and the machine. Galloway observes 4 modes of playing video games. Playing video games is a pure process that becomes visible through the machine resonance of the machine's diegetic acts. Playing video games is a subjective algorithm, an intervention in the program, both within the gameplay and during its interruption by non-diegetic acts of the operator. Playing video games is a ritual dromenon in the imaginary world of the game, which is played out in the form of diegetic acts of the operator. And finally, playing video games is a game of structure, a generative excitement between the inside and the outside, which is carried out through the non-diegetic acts of the machine. So this is a diagram of his theoretical description of video games as a genre. And I think it's very interesting because it really stresses the difference between the actions that are made by the machine and the actions that are made by the operator. And not all these actions are narrative actions, have a narrative diegetic effect. Some of these actions are actually actions that have to be made in order to run the computer game. These are all the selections, all the avatar choices, also on the level of the non-diegetic acts of the machine. These are the malfunctionings, cheatings, possibility of cheating. Also the interface, which is layered, like we have a 3D game, and over it, it's a layer of a two-dimensional control interface. So all these levels are well described by these 2 axes. Furthermore, it applies in Galloway's book also to considering artistic works. Galloway's theory of gaming proposes several important theses. The chapters on the politics of video games and possible artistic forms of counterplaying are especially interesting, since he considers the artist's approach. And we argue that artists don't invent new games, but rather modify the games from the point of view of their disciplines, which is fine art, and therefore they make visual images. Or it is conceptual art, therefore they deconstruct the medium and bring the code to the fore. Their artistic practices may be contextual and socially engaged art, therefore they choose anti-war content. Or they research avant-garde, modernist and ludistic experiments, and therefore code hacking to create chaos on the screen. So these are some examples of how artists approach to the video games. Artists are not game inventors, logicians and engineers are. However, we will show that Dragan is an artist who does exactly that. He invents new ways of techno-modified human interaction in space, which have some characteristics of play and the effect of happening that changes people. The typical interfaces of his projects can be understood as games that they involve a system of rules that governs the actions of the game machine. They involve also an algorithmic process in which the participant engages. They entail movement or a relationship to space and require the participant's expression. And finally, also collect a database of all participants' expressions. The results of game playing, such as elocutions, selections, connections, coincidences, and so on, are usually written in the database of Dragan's new media art projects and are interpreted as the records of art-induced socialization of the interactors. In this second part, we will describe a selection of Dragan's artworks in order to illustrate their workings and to ground our hypothesis. At the same time, we will show also his manifest relationship towards preserving his oeuvre. Dragan had two large retrospective exhibitions. The first one, titled Time is Out of Joint in Moderna Galleria in Ljubljana in 2000, and the second one, titled Space is Out of Joint in the Museum of Contemporary Art Metelkova in Ljubljana in 2016. At his first retrospective exhibition, Dragan presented his works in a purely conceptual and media art theoretic way. He replaced his actual projects with concept boards that represented them. A concept board contains a diagram of the relation between the elements of the project, a representative photograph of the project or a couple of photographs, and some basic information such as title, date, place, participants, main references. The array of concept boards hanged on the gallery wall was titled Time Tunnel, and we see this on this image. So these were the concept boards in the Time Tunnel. The second one was the robot that guided the visitor through the Time Tunnel and narrated the projects at each station. That is by using the barcode reader at each concept board in the gallery space. So you can also see here the robot. And this robot was controlled by a remote user via a module on the website of the exhibition. And then the third platform was the cave, with an interactive 3D reconstruction of the memory room from the film 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. So this one, which was filled with interactive objects that were related to Dragan's past projects. So at this exhibition, Dragan showed his projects from 1968 till 2000. For his retrospective exhibition, Dragan translated his artworks into a conceptual realm, construed of relations within and between the projects, and mediated them with the technologies of 2000 that connected the gallery space with a telepresent online space and a virtual space. The second retrospective had the opposite approach. It covered 5 decades of Dragan's art practice and presented around 60 video and new media art projects, both with concept boards and in their physical form, displayed on the original media, such as video wall, or migrated to new systems and reconstructed. That means coded anew, based on the concept and documentation of the original works, and using the original databases of images and texts, with some changes in the interface design, or completely reinterpreted for contemporary technologies. For example, Winter and Autumn 72 Hours, a conceptual artwork, was realized as a script and executed as a performance in 1969. In 2016, it was reconstructed with a 360-degree video panorama displayed on a smartphone and viewed with help of a simple VR system, the Google Cardboard glasses. So this is the 2016 exhibition, and these are the cardboard glasses. The happening, originally conceptualized and performed by Nusha and Srećo Dragan in the context of the expanded OHO group, was programmed. At the time, the authors identified as programmers, as 3 meetings in the Tivoli Park in Ljubljana. So on the right side of the screen, we see the concept board that represents the original happening. The media translation reconstruction was based on the written instructions for the happening, on the sketches of prescribed bodily postures at each position, and on the 8mm film that documented the happening and provided additional information by means of montage. Each second, the 2 actors changed position, which was timed by uttering the word "Ena in dvajset." The concept board for this project contains all mentioned elements and also specifies the relation that is in the core of the project. Let's go on. Our second approach, so we saw how a project from 1969 is transformed with new technologies, with augmented reality in 2016. Our second approach, the modeling of Dragan's oeuvre in the exhibition Spaces Out of Joint, with identifying the recurrent themes in his projects, revealed the following main topics. A, execution of a script. B, articulation of perception. C, image analysis. D, nomad in a networked city. E, virtual spaces. F, analysis of the medium of film, video, digital video, and television. These themes describe the action that the project requires from the participant. These projects are actually happenings and techno performances. And we find these topics throughout his artistic career. Dragan's early projects mostly cover topic A. Some cover also topics B and C. For example, the previously mentioned project Winter and Autumn, 72 hours, or 72 hours, or the project 40 times 50 times 80 centimeters of gravel under the glass from 1969, which is also based on a script that the author carried out together with a photographer. Dragan placed a 40 times 50 centimeter glass panel on the gravel. The photographer on the opposite side of the panel looked for his reflection in the glass and photographed it. Dragan then moved the panel to the adjacent field in the grid, and thus gradually paved the entire grid of 8 times 10 fields and obtained 80 photos of his reflection. So this is another project. Dragan specifically thematizes the algorithmic nature of his happenings. That means the script that the participant has to follow. And these instructions, we can recognize the Galloway's concept of the diegetic actions of the player. So we made the first connection between the game theory that we can somehow use to also describe a function in interactive and conceptual works. Topic C, image analysis, is tackled, for example, by the interactive installation Opus Caunum from 1997. The participant selects a photo from the project's database on the computer, follows the instructions, that means also the topic A, and paints the photo with a selected color above the horizon and with another color below the horizon. Finally, mixes the colors on the horizon line and saves the image in the project database. This is an example of a non-diegetic action of the participant. Non-diegetic actions of the participants, if we remember, are those that actually mean selections in the menus of the provided software. Topic B, articulation of perception, is found in the closed-circuit video White Milk of White Breasts from 1969, as well as in various interactive installations that require the participants' articulation of their impressions and experiences. Here are those projects, namely metaphoric expansions, metaphoric facsimile, metamorphosis of language, metonymy of perception, paradigm of image sonification. And these projects are from 2007 and 2009 and 2016. This is Dragan's most characteristic topic. Moreover, in these projects, we recognize an innovative game construed by Dragan, and the result of this game is the participants' socialization. Topic D, Nomad in a Network City, includes, in addition to the mobile e-book planner, which uses markers in the city, QR codes that the user can scan with a smartphone, and then read the literary text. Also, the earlier telepresence and mapping projects, Tenet, Metropolis, Cyborg's Eye, Metropolis Clavis Urbis, these are the projects from 1996 till 1998. These projects enact in a prominent way the non-diegetic actions of the machine, with various machine protocols behind the rendering of the elements and the many disturbances in hardware and software functioning and delays in online data transmission. So this was actually very noticeable when a user operated these projects, because all these technologies were very new at the time when Dragan used it. They were usually developed in computer and information sciences laboratories. Topic A, Virtual Spaces, explores the medium of computer models in relation to the Renaissance perspective. Translates, for example, the painting of the ideal city of Urbino into a 3D model of the Rotunda, a building that did not exist except on the painting. Into this rotunda, the virtual camera enters and shows the mathematically probable but never before seen interior of this space in Dragan's digital video archives from 1992. The author's research into computer modeling of virtual worlds continued with a model based on the plans of Plečnik Parliament in the video and interactive installation Rota's Axis Mundi, which the gallery visitor entered with running the video on the projection by stepping on the pedals in front of it. Dragan developed the conceptual plan of interactive entry with the vanishing point of the computer model from which all the planes in the space can be captured. And this is this example here. This topic corresponds primarily with the diegetic acts of the machine, since these are digital videos and digital images dealing with their own coming into being. To conclude, we have used Dragan's oeuvre to pursue the topicality of his new media artworks. We can recognize the recurrent themes and methods as constant that determine his artistic research. On the other hand, this approach shows the genealogical development of intermediate translations that can be understood as the foundation for the breakdown of new media artworks into individual units that are managed over time as they experience various non-synchronous changes. Additionally, we have connected the identified topics with the 4 types of gaming action as observed by Galloway in his book on gaming theory. Thank you.
So, thank you very much for coming. Basically, maybe just as an introduction, I would like to say that the 3 papers that we are presenting, myself, Narvika, and Eszter, are part of a research project funded by Slovenian Research Agency, and it's called Sustainable Digital Preservation of the Slovenian New Media Arts. And this project is tackling, I think, this really urgent need for us to record our early born digital artifacts, and in particular born digital art, which I think is the key element that will help us in the future to be able to reflect on how we came from the non-digital world into the digital one. Okay, so my talk is about genre rules as the framework for preservation and study of new media literature. The paper consists of 3 parts. In the first one, the human relationship with the world is considered epistemologically as openness to sensorial input, as well as the use of deductive logical reasoning. In the second part, the playful creativity is shown to be framed by genres, heuristic discursive tools that allow for relative stability in our dynamic interaction with different contexts. We face the world through constraints and affordances based on chosen sets of practical rules. In the conclusion, the pressing issue of the digital cultural heritage will be emphasized. The ephemeral digital cultural artifacts and their algorithmic nature can be preserved by modeling them according to their genre-based features. So the human understanding, our epistemology, is based on two pillars: the experience, including introspection, and by using deductive logic. The sense experience can be considered in a human empiricist manner. Only sensorial inputs exist that become ideas as copies. There is no causality or unifying order in reality. As much as we can hope for are associations of empirical perceptions, that is to say mental contents. These are coordinated in the mind. Similarly, the phenomenology of Franz Brentano, Edmund Husserl, Roman Ingarden, and others foregrounded the intentional structure of human consciousness, consisting of an indivisible triad. So you have intention, intentional object, object in the mind, and the relation between our intention and the thing that the object that we are thinking about. The thought reaches towards its object and thereby inevitably changes it. It appropriates it. The self-reflective attitude of phenomenology, however, explicitly acknowledges the relational nature of the mind's contents and works towards supporting the otherness of the target of our intention. On the other hand, humans can project and predict consequences of any given functional constellation. We can calculate causation in a mechanical sense. The computer science and engineering has built on the Turing's idea of computing machines, now called Turing machines. The logic gates in the computer and the data inputs generate what we now call artificial intelligence in the technical meaning of the term. And this is done, of course, mechanically. The bipolarity of empirical and logico-mathematical information reflects the difference between data acquisition, the primary observation through senses, or by proxy through testimony, that is to say other people's already interpreted sense data, and the calculations as a resource. The modes of acquiring information either in isolation or in a community of speakers can be processed in a machine-like manner. So in computer engineering, the logical implication is the relation between an implementation and its specification, the realized end project and the initial requirements setting limits to the design process. Both the implementation and specification are conjunctions of all implemented system behaviors, all the requirements listed in the specification. Multiple implementations obviously satisfy the requirements of a given specification, since in logic the implication, that means if something then something else, is not reversible, and the implementation is thus less abstract than specification. The different levels of abstraction allow for encapsulations of modules, since the correct functioning of a module, of a modular artifact, is logically, that is to say mechanically, guaranteed. This is of great use in today's digitally enhanced as well as transformed world. There is, of course, a critically important discontinuity between human understanding and the logical deduction in a computer. The linguist John Searle has famously presented the Chinese room argument, in which a non-Chinese speaking person responds correctly to questions in Chinese by using English instructions for manipulating Chinese symbols, just like a computer. This, however, does not mean that this person understands what is being said. Willard van Orman Quine, in Epistemology Naturalized, understands a human as a natural transformer of a meager, the scarce input from senses into a torrential output of descriptions. These are transformations from the world of experiential input into various languages founded in communities of speakers. A rule-governed idea of games as playful, alternative, and separate worlds, simulations, sometimes supported by computers, is the idea of play in a reduced state as construed by Johann Huizinga. So the notion of game is useful since the cybernetic systems and computer algorithms are following rules. Luciano Floridi, a philosopher, while considering the affordances of artificial intelligence, such as machine learning, foregrounds ludification, ludus from a game, in Latin, which tackles game-like tasks with constraining rules by transforming them into tasks with constitutive time rules. So, as an example, a computer can learn games like chess or Go by itself with no input except the rules of the game, by using brute force of repetitive playing and verifying the rate of success. It cannot master a bicycle race since it cannot generate all the variables and their dynamics. So, rules for particular artworks are summarized or outlined in genre constructs. And here is one possible look at different genres within the domain of electronic literature. Scott Redberg maps the domain of the electronic literature and uses the descriptive and empirical approach to genre as a set of related practices. These give readers a set of tools to enable them to understand how to read as they encounter the new forms of digital writing. Redberg emphasizes the ties with the literary and avant-garde practices of the 20th century. These appear to be among the key forces that articulate the creativity that uses the new information technologies. And I will have to shorten this part, but let's have a look at the slides. So Redberg identifies 5 core genres of electronic literature, and these are combinatory poetics. So basically you take let's say a list of verses and you automatically mix them up. And of course, this is one possible way. The next one is hypertext fiction. World Wide Web pages are hypertexts. So basically you have texts and some words are linked. So hypertext fiction has fiction means basically telling stories in so basically it's about trying to go through novels, stories in a non-linear fashion. Then there's interactive fiction and other game-like forms. Here, basically, you progress through, let's say, adventure game by writing commands that basically manipulate the game. So interactive fiction is actually playing a game in order to discover the diegetic, the narrative world. Then, of course, there's the kinetic and interactive poetry. So when the actually words move and this movement basically carries meaning. And of course, then there's the network writing in both meanings of the term. One is when the writing that reflects on the fact that discourse, what we are saying, is intertwined with different contexts, relates differently to different aspects of our lives. And of course, the other important part is, of course, when there is a network of authors that collaborate in order to produce a new artwork. So Redberg's genres are supported by a comprehensive overview of the field supported by the electronic literature knowledge base that is available online. His approach connects ways of thinking about new media literature with literary and art traditions. The reverse effect is particularly striking and informative, namely by making apparent how literary projects in the computer media rethink and enrich our understanding of the art tradition of the 20th century and even before that. And I can testify to this since I am and was a teacher of literature. I would be using cybertexts as a means to teach old ancient Chinese literature, because if you take like one of the earliest Chinese texts is I Ching, the Book of Changes, basically you randomly select parts of this book as a part of basically this is where you try to predict future, no? So basically the I Ching, this book is actually a cybertext, and basically it's a way how to so what Redberg does, he does this turn onto the whole like 20th century literary traditions, in particular the experimental part. So Redberg's account emphasizes the continuities between the previous media and art forms. Leo Manovic in his book rejects the continuity of, for instance, remediation of previous art forms, and he argues that computer is a meta-medium, the one that produces, the meta-medium, the computer produces simulates previous media. For Manovic, the task of a new media artist is twofold. So this is basically what is how he understands a new media object. So basically, a new media artist has to collect a relevant database, and then the second task is to articulate a dynamic and adaptable interface to access it, acknowledging that the juxtapositions of different information modules help us make sense of the previously unordered collection of data. What we have here is a practical articulation of the task that an artist is faced with. Such a view does not invalidate the study of traditions that is, of course, practiced by artists all the time. It does, however, recognize the break in the media landscape, the softwarization of culture through digital technologies. Espen Orshet's approach in cybertext considered cybertext a perspective for the study of all literature, not a particular genre. The text is a textual machine consisting of a verbal sign, a reader-user, the operator, and the medium. The transfer from the verbal sign to the receiver is not trivial, as when everybody reads the same text in printed copies of a book. In the case of a cybertext, one has to engage physically with the textual machine to modify the written words. So basically you have to play the game using some interface, or you need to use sticks to navigate your way to this ancient Chinese Book of Changes. The visual poetry, hypertext, as well as interactive fictions require the single user to simultaneously read the text and also play a game. The two reception modes interfere with each other, disrupt, and they transform the whole reception process. So the single user cybertext is a double creation of a hybrid mix of text and game. So this is the first category that Arset proposes. A completely different phenomenon is the multi-user discourse. Multiple users need to coordinate their contributions to the joint verbal or artistic output. In order for a multi-user discourse to exist, it has to be, of course, linked to a more or less stable and continuous community of users. The first winner in the digital communities category at the Ars Electronica in 2004 was the Wikipedia, which is maintained and continuously expanded by a structured community of users with several roles. What the authors of such platform do, according to Orshet, is that they provide an etiquette, rules of behavior for a new digital community. The result of creativity in the multi-user genre category are positions of the subjects within a digital community around the platform, like Wikipedia, Instagram, X, Twitter, so on. The third option is to consider the elusive notion of genuine machine-based creativity. This is linked to a complex array of issues and often misconceptions surrounding the current hype around artificial intelligence. What is needed here for one to be able to talk concretely about such a variant of new media art is some new meaningful text or multimedia content generation which is based on the accelerated data processing and transmission. There is an important problem that needs to be addressed today, as I've already said. Several generations of work by digital new media artists are firmly in the past, while media art remains synonymous with new and emergent, and the growing vastness of the lost consequently goes unacknowledged. The genre-based approach attempts to tackle the preservation issue by identifying the key elements of individual works that need to be recorded and preserved. The descriptions are always already interpretation with an intrinsic goal of making the works reenactable, so to reenact them and accessible to the audiences of the future. To create a model of something entails a decision on the goals that this model tries to accomplish, and by making explicit the aspects of the referent that are preserved in the model. Here we shall look more closely at the third type of the born digital work according to Eszter Polonyi, so the machine-based creativity. So now the example in a commissioned work in 2000 for the 200th anniversary exhibition about the Slovene national poet France Prešeren, Uroš Ocepek, a well-known net artist, realized a work called National Culture, Nacija Kultura, which was based on a now obsolete Yahoo-type portal. The search queries sent to the portal by its users were forwarded to the gallery space and displayed in the shape of an Italian sonnet on a projection. In 2020, the project was reconstructed and presented at the Museum of Contemporary Art Metelkova in Ljubljana. So basically, here we see the sonnets on the screens. This is the version from 2022. So in 2000, what you would type into the search window would be shown in the, what everybody using this portal would be typing would be shown in the gallery. So, and it looked more or less like this, but on a projection. Only one projection, of course. Okay, as in the case of software design specification to modern artwork, one has to define the necessary properties of the reconstructed version for it to emulate a similar or the same artistic idea. So I'm talking about how we managed to recreate the project in 2022. As it was said above, from this follows the insight that the end result will be one possible implementation. So you have necessary properties of the project as such, but then the reenactment will be one possible implementation. The same specification may be satisfied also by other and different implementations. In Uroš Opek's project, to preserve its integrity, one needs to include the following elements. So, a representative sample of a segment of Slovene nation's discourse has to be obtained. So you have to get a sample of Slovene language. This sample needs to be inconsistent with the high culture idiom and its nation-centered values, which echoes, in Prešeren's case, the romantic nationalisms. From this sample, Italian sonnets, representative of the process of cultivating the Slovene literary language in the works of Prešeren, need to be built using an automatic process. And the resulting sonnets need to be interesting and meaningful for humans in a similar way, but not in the same way as the human written sonnets are. These building blocks specify the database interface definition of a new media art object by Manović, for instance. as we see. We have the database, and the interface is the sonnet. Basically, the database is you need to get the sample of Slovene language. The Mat Curia web directory so it was web directory, basically sort of a list of what you can find on the internet. I don't know how many of you remember this portal. So it was used by many in Slovenia in 2000 and is now gone. So the project has been reconstructed by experimenting with machine learning algorithms while trying to preserve the same idea in the new circumstances after 22 years. The tweets were used as training sets for a GPT-2 large language model, which other data sets, in particular digitized poetry, to fine-tune the model to be able to generate sonnets. The critical nation minus culture, because if you're a nacija dash črtica kultura is like nacija minus kultura, nation minus culture. Element was most prominent in Twitter by using hate speech in cases of Slovenian right-wing politicians, in particular the Prime Minister. And these were used as prompts for generating sonnets. The sonnets continue from the prompt as the first line or part until the end using the GPT-2 model output. The sonnets from 2000, so the ones from 2000 were very chaotic, consisting of short fragments, queries by contingent users, whereas GPT-2 built sonnets do demonstrate language-like continuity that sometimes makes perfect representational sense. So, the case of Vuk Čosić's exhibition of nation culture work from 2000 in 2022 has shown at least two key concerns that the author was focusing on. The artist wants to present, and I think this was very clear in case of Srečo Dragan's works in his retrospective exhibitions, the artist wants to present an artwork as a compelling entity, never as a mere copy of a past exhibition setup. And another key concern for Vuk Čosić was the significance of the latest computer and network-based technologies for the culture in the widest sense, their social and political aspects. This aspect was less emphasized in the communications and discussions accompanying the exhibition. Already in the year 2000, the project Nation Culture entailed the most advanced web technologies as used in Slovenia, not as much in technical sense, but as in the sense of being a successful online portal and a platform. It was, of course, Web 1.0, so it was not a platform in the sense of people participating. However, you would actually enter your websites into the directory. So it was interactive, but still in the logic of the early web. In 2022, a similar techno-transgression and deep social dilemma was the capacity of computers to output human-like language. For instance, as in the case of the widely discussed and used ChatGPT. Čosić worked together with Marko Plahuta, a computer engineer, to train a large language model on Slovene tweets, the most advanced model at the time. So, therefore, alongside the critical message regarding the communication media, also an intense interest in the details of information technology development is an essential component of the Nation Culture project. Such an aspect is, of course, difficult to model without the author being present, and it points to probably an essential aspect that stands in the background of many new media art practices. So, thank you. So, any immediate questions, and I'll give the microphone to Eszter.
Can you actually hear anything? Yeah? Okay, good. There's this wonderful background soundscape of a range of different things happening, so I wasn't sure. Okay, so in this presentation, I'm going to be talking to you about not new media, but old media. That is, media that are now no longer new, but that at one point in the past were considered very much cutting edge. For instance, here I'm showing you a page of the 17th century book by Athanasius Kircher, which is really considered one of the earliest media theoretical texts, alongside his illustration of what I will be calling a magic lantern. Okay, many things have changed since the life cycle of a particular media device accelerated, so that we can say that today media can be new. When we had media devices in the 17th century, their newness was not really relevant, given that this device, the magic lantern device, which you see essentially distributed across the two spaces, the technical point being projection of a light from a source onto a screen. So this is a media device that was basically around for 200 years. It was invented in 1600s and it lasted until the 1800s. So you cannot really say that this is a new media device, right? This is a moment when media dominance really happens for such a long period of time that you can no longer say that the most attractive thing about this is its novelty, right? We can call it magical, but we can't really call it new. And so the point that I'm trying to make about old media is that it was really a concept that was invented at the point when new media were also invented. The two, old media and new media, really emerge at the same time, and it's with the Great Depression that was started in the late 1920s, and this man called Bernard London, who invents the concept of obsolescence. And obsolescence, do we all understand this term? This is when we have a device, a technical device, that is being used by people. It is being circulated through society, and we continue to use it, but the industry no longer supports it. The moment that there is no longer infrastructural support for a media device, that means it is obsolete. You can continue using it at your own risk. When London introduced this concept in 1932, it was as a tax. He wanted to solve the Great Depression using planned obsolescence. Okay, so in this era today, where we have new media virtually in all realms of life, we find ourselves not only surrounded by a mediascape and our functions supported by media networks, but also increasingly forming a part of an aging, no longer supported, downgraded, non-functional network of media platforms and media infrastructures. So we have an era today that places all of its bets, it invests all of its energies into something that is increasingly fleeting and transient, this experience of novelty. And in a sense, we're also completely awash, almost drowning in the material permanence of dead media. And here I'm showing you a really cool text by an architect called Rem Koolhaas. It's called Junk Space. And Rem Koolhaas is thinking on the other side. This is an example of junk space, but I will not really get into this. There's a really cool installation artist, a new media artist called Nam June Paik, and this is sort of the laboratory that he is working from in building his new media art installations. So this is the hopeful side of the screen, and then the less hopeful side of the screen is here, this notion of junk space. Rem Koolhaas said that essentially right now, today, we have built more than all previous generations put together, right? We have more built stuff than ever before, and yet, he says, we do not leave pyramids. but a kind of residual human debris that he calls junk space, which is essentially a scaly carapace of technological waste that litters the planet. Okay, so I'm not going to go with the sort of the hopeless, the dystopian. I'm going to try to redeem us, and instead of thinking about new media, old media, media generally as trash, I'm going to be taking the stand of a small community called media archaeologists. They're scholars who really, they make their own this idea that one person's trash is another person's treasure. You know this expression. Okay, and so essentially what media archaeologists are trying to say, and here I'm giving you some of the classics, which is Ackland, his idea of residual media, so against this media that sticks around like the scaly substance of the skin across the planet, but also these two guys, the Scandinavian Erkki Huhtamo and Jussi Parikka, very interesting media archaeologists. Siegfried Zielinski is in Germany. I will be not really talking about him, but he is a huge inspiration for me. And then there's a woman who is very young called Meredith Back, who wrote a book about the media history of toys and what the significance of historical techniques of playfulness might mean. Okay, so in what remains of my talk, I will be taking the much more narrow argument that the history of media holds important lessons, not just about why our art, culture, literature, and music looks and sounds the way it does, but about how we have been shaped into viewers and spectators and audience members and creators by the history of media. Consequently, how the past of media might be an invaluable resource for thinking about the future of our media, reshaping, reimagining what media might do for us today. Okay, so I make this case from for old media. So I'm standing on the side of the media archaeologists, and I'm saying that there is a future to be found here, but we have to look very closely. And I'm bearing in mind this criticism that has recently emerged. Some of you may have seen these books. If not, I really highly recommend them. Weapons of Math Destruction, Race After Technology. These are two very highly debated books. The film in the middle called Coded Bias, if you have not seen it, I really recommend it. It's on Netflix, I think, still. These are people who are coming, they're mostly actually people working for the tech industry who are whistleblowers. They're coming forward and they're saying, well, actually the tech that these giant corporations have been supporting with their investments show signs of making decisions that are potentially similar to the kinds of decisions that humans make when they don't really think very hard. When the decisions are made reflexively, spontaneously, unreflectingly, these decisions are very often biased. And the problem is that what they're saying is that we have technologies that are creating bias and reproducing the bias that we unconsciously hold. And so the position that I'm taking here is that how is it that we can today, as teachers, as students, as critics, as artists, as creative people, how can we make it better? And I'm thinking that we can make it better by thinking about media with the access that old media gives us to technology. Okay. So one of the things that these people are saying, but I won't really get into this, is that the main customer of these media industries has become the state, and it's essentially, it's not just your phone that is watching you, right? We all know that our phones are watching and listening to us. It's not just the state. It's not just our phones. It's also the state that is incorporating these media technologies, these technologies of surveillance into the way that they are making decisions about our futures, about whether you qualify for social welfare, whether you get a bank loan, whether your kid gets admitted into this or that university, right? So there's a digitalization of the civic infrastructure that means that these problems of bias are real for everyone who uses a digital portal. Okay. All right. So, do I still have 10 minutes? Yeah? Okay. Now, I want to transition into the spaces that have been collecting older style, antiquated, residual technologies. And these are spaces that, like this, for example, this is a space in which we can imagine old tech appearing, right? This is a cultural center. You can imagine them appearing in galleries and museums. You can imagine them appearing in high schools and universities. And this is the last kind of space that I want to focus on, because it is a pedagogic space. It's a didactic space. It's a space of learning where we have the opportunity of thinking about how technology is influencing and impacting our relationship to other people, our social bonds, how it is that we form relationships with others. This really should be part of our education, the education that we receive. And I want to show you, as a first example, a page of a zine that was circulated by a student at the University of Colorado in Boulder, so in North America, where we have someone called Laurie Emerson starting a lab. And she calls it, as you see, she calls it a media archaeology lab. And this zine is part of this space. So this space is putting out this zine. And as you can see from the title of the zine, the first step to fixing things is opening up. And that is going to be sort of the driving motto of this space. And this is going to be the first space that I talk about. I'm going to talk about maybe one or two more spaces, kind of as an inspiration to you to think about what it takes to open up communities that you know to the experience of old tech and old media technologies. Okay, so what is this media archaeology lab? As I said, this is the founder, Laurie Emerson, and she's writing what the title is called Toward a Variantology of Hands-on Practice. Variantology is a term that is invented by one of these media archaeologists to mean exposure to a range of different historic devices. Because today, when we think of media devices, we think of software, we think of apps, we think of all sorts of things that are on the computer, right? But before, you had media devices that were very physically disconnected, right? And so variantology is really, it addresses this specificity of old media of being very all over the place, you know? You have to really make an effort to assemble all of them in one location. And this is what she says. No doubt part of the reason why the arts and humanities must continue to argue for importance of doing materially grounded and embodied teaching and research comes from these disciplines' long-standing identification with the practice of hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is a fancy word to mean interpretation and close reading, both of which, rightly or wrongly, come to be seen as agnostic to medium and materiality. Okay, so what is she saying is important about this? On the one hand, we have open-ended play, right? You have people who are interacting with media, with old media, that no longer have this aura about them. You know how you encounter your grandmother's gramophone, LP player, you know, or some antique film projector, and you don't want to touch it, right? Because you're afraid of breaking it. So on the one hand, you break this sense that you cannot intervene in technology that we have today as well. You know, we cannot intervene in the computer. We have this impression because it's in a black box, right? So you move beyond that, but you also are incentivized to think about not only intervening, but actually subverting the device in what is called reverse engineering. And this is a little bit like hacking, and it happens through the practice of hermeneutics, through the practice of interpretation of the original function of the device that you are then going to modify as you engage with it. Okay, so this is what it looks like. This is just to show you the kind of activity that would go on in a space like this, that is, and what it looks like actually. If you have ever been in a space, space like this, that is a media archaeology lab, you will recognize it immediately because it's full of machines, and the machines are sitting next to each other, and they're completely, they're usually completely dead. And this is a very important image because it shows you what it means to actually reanimate them and to actually interact with these media devices. And we have here an example of a young undergraduate student who is coming into the lab and who is being asked to engage with a computer from decades ago and to play a video game. And apparently, children, young adults, have a very sort of an immediate relationship to something that they would not necessarily recognize, but that might be in the memory of their families. So there is an immediate connection that Laurie Emerson and other archaeologists have said that younger generations have with older tech, but they need to be taught, right? There is a certain kind of expertise that needs to be transmitted. And so here are the examples of the types of activity that would happen in one of these locations, like learning Linux, learning TV scoreboarding, and various adventures through different types of technology, software, video game, you name it. Okay. This is another example of another lab that was founded. This is also relatively, pioneering in the early 2000s, that there was this guy called Wolfgang Ernst. You actually may have heard of Ernst because he appeared recently on, did you know this? Slovenian television, RTV, had a half-an-hour interview with Ernst, who was speaking in German about the media archaeological fundus that he founded at the Humboldt University. Yes, so I want to give you a quote by him of why it is that this kind of space matters in the long run. And here I think you have to understand that depending on where these laboratories land, they can actually have very different functions. So for instance, there have been media labs in museums and in galleries, and there the function of interacting with old media has this kind of connotation of restoration in the way that we might think of with painting or sculpture. You interact with it in order to bring it back to a former state of being such that it is a perfect representation of a historical context, right? That's how we imagine an interaction with a historic object in the context, in the space of a museum. That's not what's happening here. This interaction is not about recreating a perfect experience of the past. And I'm going to give you a quote by Ernst that will help you understand that. The importance here, in the context of a pedagogic space, in the context of a high school or a university, is to break the device. It is to really open the device for the purposes of maybe making it functional, but making it, the most important thing is making it relevant to you today. And that's sort of what Aleš was talking about with Vuk. He was taking an older work of art, and he basically broke it. He didn't produce the same work he had in 2000 and 2022. He made a new work. He made it relevant. And so this is a really important transition, a shift that happens in between these spaces. The space of perfect restoration versus the space of repurposing, of recycling, of reverse engineering, of hacking, where you have to break things in order for them to have meaning today. Okay, quick quote. This is an example that Ernst is going to give this is actually a really good example of an old media that probably no one here has ever interacted with. I certainly have not, but that actually says something about digital technologies today, even though it's from the 19th century. And it's the electric telegraph. So I'm going to start at the beginning. The bias of this media archaeology laboratory is to train students to resist the nostalgic or even melancholic impulse which is normally associated with so-called dead media. So we don't want to be sad. You know, we don't want to mourn the loss of the medium, but to discover the retro-futuristic element instead. For instance, the electric telegraph, for example, operates with discrete signal transmission, a code which after an age of AM media such as radio return to in unexpected ways. Whereas digital data transmission is much too fast to be perceivable directly to the human senses, right? We would not be able to intercept the the signals that are, for example, moving through this computer. The classic telegraph, dots and dashes, when connected to an acoustic mechanism, so he's sonifying them, may serve as a way of slowing down and sonifying the nature of coded signal transmission. And here I promise I am finishing. So the idea, the strategy, and here I'm showing you the video, the sort of the output that students created inside of this laboratory each time. In the bottom row, you see a device. On the left-hand side, you see a synth, like a synthesizer from the 90s. Here there is an inkjet printer's ink device. And then on the right-hand side, you have a stereoscope, which is a 19th century device. So you have devices from, you know, this is the variantology. He has assembled all sorts of different types of media. And the point is, and here he says, our strategy is repair once, and then essentially repeat many times. And essentially you repair the device in order to get an experience out of it. You record that, and then you break it again. And you get a new experience, and you record that. So the idea is operative videos attached to the online presentation, which you have here, a YouTube channel. It's not just an illustration of the device, you know, this is what the device used to look like. It is also a form of argumentation in another medium, right? It's the medium of video, digital video, that now is remediating a 19th century stereoscopic device, for instance. Okay. I could have shown you other examples of labs. Essentially, what I'm trying to tell you is that there is a new interest in turning to technology, to developing critical awareness of societal problems. And this is happening inside of universities. This one, for example, is a laboratory that was founded by the community in Groningen in the Netherlands. And if you're interested in media archaeology, I would really recommend these two books because they were written by this woman, Annie, who just retired. You know, she spent her entire career building this laboratory, which is the Film Archive and Media Archaeology Lab. And here you see the students and the professor interacting with this old phonograph. Right before she retired, she wrote these, with her colleagues, she wrote these 2 wonderful books about why this is a meaningful experience to students today. I wanted to sort of nod to Aleš's work in the sense that there was, for a limited period of time, although maybe it still exists, a new media lab inside of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Ljubljana. So a similar attempt was happened here in Slovenia. Also to Narvika, who works in the computer science faculty with students to restore the work of artists like Srećo Dragan, turning the classroom into a space, much like a laboratory, where the works are being reimagined by newer and newer generations. And this is just another example. This is where I work also in Italy at the Film and Video Restoration Lab, which is called La Camera Ottica. You basically, what I'm trying to say is these all are great spaces and they look heavily financed and like they have, they do world-class work. All of these really help professionals, artists, archivists, collectors restore. But you do not need a world-class collection. You do not need major funders in order to have such a lab, in order to bring old tech to your community. Essentially, as long as you have access to eBay, you can find the stuff. This stuff, even though it's the beginnings, it's the origins of media, costs like 20 euros online to find. I mean, literally, you're paying for shipping. I built a collection to teach here, a teaching collection. I'm teaching devices, materials from the 1860s. That's really old, which I purchased for something that I can afford. So what I'm saying in conclusion is that building the collection to teach from, and whether that is teaching high schoolers or university students or doing public outreach, it's not very complicated. Finding the space where you can do it is a different question. Okay, thank you.
Okay, hi. I'm Uroš. I'm a computer science teacher. I'm not used to speaking English, but I will try my best. So yeah, I'm from Terbolem, I'm from here. And for beginning, I would like to show you an intro that I made because my student told me to create a jingle and intro to introduce myself. So I hope you can see it and also hear it. No, just a picture, but you will see my school, my students, also some projects that was also here in Speculum Artium. I love traveling, and of course, I like to teach young students. My students are from 14 to 19 years old, and yes, you can see my class. And I wore a Pikachu back then, but this is the other topic. So I will show you the map. So we are in the center of Slovenia, of course, and we are the only school in Slovenia that teaches artificial intelligence in this high school. So our school is translated into English as a secondary technical and vocational school Trbovlje, and since 2018 we are the first school, and of course the only one that teaches these topics as part of machine learning and data mining. Here you can see the timeline. So I start some school projects in the year 2013, and then we also got the Silver Award from the Zasavia Region Chamber of Commerce for Innovation Tršica Learning Environment. Tršica stands for the recommendation system with constructivist approach of learning, as spin-off of my PhD on the Faculty of Computer Science, Computer and Information Science, Ljubljana. So yeah, I'm pretty old. Also, I got a gold award from the Zasawi Region Chamber of Commerce for innovation first patrons. PRST stands for perceiving, reflecting, studying, and thinking. And I combined all different learning, cognitive, and also thinking styles into one model to recognize my students as part of meta-learning. Of course, in the year 2018, I started the class called Introduction to Artificial Intelligence, but right now I'm still teaching these subjects, and I also incorporate large language models because this is the big topic in the media and also in my school because my students use ChatGPT and other things to solve some problems and homeworks. Maybe just for a fun fact, also we designed an installation called BCI Painter, Brain Computer Interface, painting with thoughts. So we are very proud that we managed and also designed such innovation. And last year, we launched the first Slovenian waltz created with artificial intelligence. And this year we launched KMBT. I will show you about a didactical tool for learning chemistry made, of course, by using Gen AI. So, as you can see, in my teaching career, artificial intelligence is part of my subjects of study. Also, artificial intelligence is the field for learning and also creating some student projects. And also I use AI as a tutor in the process of learning. So all these 4 different points. Of course, most of people think that artificial intelligence are robots and they are waiting to slave us. But if we go back in the history, we can see our Slovenian history about what we thought what AI was back then. And here is Slovenian computer called Iskra Delta Triglav, three-headed, from the movie Summer in the Seashell. And of course, this is very important for our culture and history. But I'm pretty sure that you know about the computer Electronicon Z1. Do you know it? I hope so not, because it's a fake news. But in this way, I learned my students, because it's very important to also to teach critical thinking, to be aware of fake news, not just in the media, but also in the classroom. And yeah, they were shocked why they put down all these facts, but it's just a fake news. And another one, of course, the first group selfie. And they believe it, of course. But after 5 minutes, they asked me, what about the camera? There are no legs, no tripod. And of course, it was made by artificial intelligence, Midjourney. So yeah, I use image generators, not just for teaching, but also to creating some different projects. For example, to provide some thumbnails, also for YouTube, of course. And I add glasses, then my face, maybe some avatars, because my students connect me to the Pikachu, of course, of the Pokemon. And because we are talking about Pokemon, we can also discuss about countries, about Slovenia. And for example, here we can see Pokemon from Croatia, from Germany. So Croatia, Germany, Spain, and Sweden. And we can discuss about our Slovenian Pokemon. It's a rooster with white, blue, and red colors, of course. And there are Alps. Landscape is typical Slovenian. But we have also human fish as a Pokemon. And another lake, and so on. So this kind is also very interesting to students. And then, of course, they want to create their own Pokemon. Here are muffins as country. Of course, again, Croatia, Germany, Spain, and Sweden. But of course, Slovenia, we are the best. We have the best muffin. It's very delicious, as you can see, but sadly was made by artificial intelligence technology called Midjourney. Here is example of our mythological creature. Back then we see Bled and Bohin, mixture of them. We have Captain Slovenia and Slovenian Joker, of course. And we can discuss about our culture, our tradition, clothes, and so on. But these clothes are not Slovenian. They are more Polish maybe Czechoslovakian, but not Slovenian. But back then, last year, I presented Slovenia on the Global Teacher Prize in Paris, and I need a formal man suit. And these are example of our national clothes for men, but I was not happy with it, so I asked to produce a Hugo Boss suit with national Slovenian emblems, patterns, and so on. So here we have a result, and of course, this is my suit made by artificial intelligence and Photoshop. But I'm still searching for designer and provider such suit for the next year, maybe. Here in Zasavje, we are very proud of Anna Dimnik, and here is illustration made by artificial intelligence, technology called Midjourney. But we can also do, in the other hand, so we can search, we can ask artificial intelligence to describe this picture. And we can find some not very good words, for example, because we need to be aware of learning ethics and awareness and also values, national values. And here we can write about unattractive fat woman wearing slaving clothes and so on. But this is from Midjourney, no censor and so on. So yeah, we need to be careful also to discuss about these things. But on the other hand, we can be creative. For example, some old postcards made by artificial intelligence, or maybe statues or watercolor paintings, or marble statues or tattoos. Even though it's crazy to have such tattoo, but you never know. I also use artificial intelligence to produce my music. Of course, I can't speak, I can't sing, but artificial intelligence has my voice. I cloned my voice to produce such songs to show students what they should be aware of in the media, YouTube, and so on. About creating our last innovation, it's called Chembitia, creatures from chemistry. Of course, we use it, Bing Image Creator, to create our Pokemon, so our chemistry creatures. Each of them represents elements and other things from chemistry, and of course, water is presented as a mighty legend creature. And another one, salt, of course, is also very mythological. We are very proud of these projects because we got a lot of awards and because we have the youngest innovators in our school, because they got all these accolades last year and they were the first year, so 15 years old. So we have the youngest innovators here in Trbovlje. And sadly, we don't have the music, but we can listen on YouTube. Our first Slovenian waltz created with artificial intelligence, and this project was called Ausenik because of the ensemble Ausenik, of course. Maybe to summarize, maybe all 4 lectures, here is the citation for Alexis Carrel. The goal of civilization is not the advancement of the science and machine, but the betterment of the humanity. Thank you.
So excuse me to squeeze here. First of all, in the name of all the participants and also Speculum Artium Festival, thank you very much that you joined us today and gave us this lecture. It was very interesting to listen to all of you. So now we'll try. Let's first try now to give the audience some possibility. If there are some things to be asked, please.
Thanks for the talks and for the insights. I have a question for you. So I'm also very interested into like old machines. So here in the background, a typewriter. This is my installation where I used an old typewriter to create a music and light installation. And I have a question about what you said. I'm not sure, maybe I didn't get it right. So you mentioned at one point that the use or working with the old machines can somehow tackle social problems. Could you, I didn't quite get like the connection. Could you maybe say something about this? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, direct social issues have, I mean, there are many ways of answering this question. And I think, so I'm writing a book about facial recognition, for instance, and how to tackle the sorts of issues that arise when people are misrecognized and the reasons why they are being misrecognized. And I'm tackling this problem via actually the history of images of the human head and the different spaces in which those were analyzed and machines were built to analyze the human head, including artistic, art historical, aesthetic spaces. So that's a much more sort of pointed way of answering your question about really honing in on a specific social issue and finding a way to open that black box by finding echoes in time of similar techniques that have been passed down, not necessarily in terms of the specificities of the operations, although there actually is a lot of similarity back all the way back into the 1800s with criminology and stuff like that. But in terms of the ways that that affect is involved, and the openings onto human subjectivity that on the one hand create the opportunity for imagination and for a kind of beautiful exploration of associations that you never knew you had, and you know, the reverse of that being that what also comes out in these moments of sort of interaction with you know, images or a device that shows you images is often, you know, unreflective prejudices and stereotypes and biases that are equally a part of our unconscious. So again, that was not the way I wanted to answer the question, because I think what is at stake here is simply giving people the opportunity to remember and giving them the space to reflect on the kinds of habits that they have inherited from their parents and their grandparents who have used these very similar devices. And in the act of playing with something, opening it up and turning it into something that it wasn't previously, confronting those ghosts. That's more what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Maybe I have one. Yeah, since in the first two lectures, we heard a lot about the need to preserve the digital content that now circles around and in some way aesthetically seen is equal to, let's say, prints that we already have. And when, at least in Slovenia, we're talking about printed books, there are laws that require for you to give at least one copy to the National Library. They are considered national treasure, a heritage. On the other hand, we have digital media, one of the pioneers of new media art, as you presented, where there's no like a public, governmental cluster to preserve it. Do you think that this has to change, and in what way do you think this will continue, and how fast? Are we running out of time for at least the early works?
Yeah, I mean, definitely this is a very good point that you, this comparison with books that are preserved in libraries. Also, new media works could be like published and preserved in libraries. But that's, I guess in art is always this selling the artwork like impossible. You know, it's another culture, I guess. And yeah, the opportunity to preserve a new media art, I see it maybe really here in Terbolia with Speculum Artium that could develop a laboratory. I guess you, now for so many years you are exhibiting, maybe you preserved some of the art pieces. How does it go? I mean, it's, yeah.
So you can finish, and then I'll just reply.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I mean, it's always about this infrastructure, and I think it's also about these special points that could, I mean, be a kind of a museum or something, or a library. And then again, it's what we showed, that artists actually are not so interested in, you know, doing again the same work. They are somehow making it more relevant for the today context. It's also this transformation is important. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your answer. And it did, when you mentioned Speculum Artium and preserving the artworks, somehow my memory goes back to 2019 when we hosted here the retrospective exhibition of selected works of Christa Sommer and Laurent Minonneau. And exactly what also you mentioned in your lecture happened. Their pioneer works from the early 90s were practically impossible to be recreated with original devices that were meant. So what we actually saw here on the exhibition was, to some point, what the artist also wanted. It was a new creation. The content was the same, but a lot of things has changed because so much time has passed from the time that this was created with the technology that today nobody knows about it. I mean, and I think the biggest problem for conserving, to preserve new media artworks, it's actually a technical question, because technologies used today get outdated in 2-3 years, and that is going to be a real problem. I mean, maybe some other artists in the audience can also answer it. Let's say, how do you imagine your artworks currently, let's say displayed here? How do you think that you're going to preserve them? Let's say if you wanted to present them in like 10 years now.
I have another example, because in 2017 I made a large lenticular print, because I thought that was animation, and it was presented in Zagreb at the Animation Festival. And ceremonially, I crushed the hard disk with all the data, so making it a unique artwork. And I'm not really sure what I was doing there, but maybe you can answer that.
Aleš, maybe you are in this theoretical model.
Yeah, you know, there was this project in the region Baden-Baden, Saarbrücken, Karlsruhe, you know, and they were working on how archiving and preserving old media. And one of the Slovenian net art pioneers was involved in this project, Igor Strohmayer, And at a certain point, he decided that he will switch off and sort of destroy all his works systematically. So there was this slow ceremonial fade out of all his works, and the article that is published in this scholarly monograph is unreadable because they're like probably wrong encoding, so it's just gibberish. So he did this as he comes from the theater background, so it is, you know, a way that you raise awareness, you know, to the issues, you know, and also to reflect on the importance of remembering how we came here. So maybe I think what was really interesting in our presentations today, also with our colleague Ocepek, I think there was always this creativity, whether in the case of the artist himself, or in the case of the people being involved with tinkering, playing with stuff, you know, that, and basically you're supposed to be interested in something and then you do something with it. And I think that the most important thing here would be, you know, also that, yeah, you bring the phenomena, you know, that nobody can really know what to do with these images, you know, that appear in front of us, you know, that of course you know theoretically how they are produced. So can you, I also see here that this sort of learning in this middle school context is basically not learning like taking information only into taking ready-made information and infusing it into young girls and boys' minds, but also they are creating. Can you so maybe explain how you sort of balance teaching how to program and then of course making them critically aware of, you know, yeah, what it means when you have like a selfie or a computer from the time of Turing, you know, which is, yeah. So can you like illustrate a bit, you know, what's going on actually in the classroom?
Okay, and I need to explain in English, of course. Yeah. So firstly, for me, it's important that I'm happy to be teacher in the classroom, and I can play also with technology. For me, it's the most important thing. The second important thing is that I not just give them the lecture about the technology, about the coding and so on, but also that they are aware about the culture, about the media, everything at the same time. And the third one, I think that our school system is made for the average, not for the best one or the least one. So I think that I need to provide such environment in the classroom, also to be creative, to create something new. And this is the most important thing for me. And each year, I also choose one topic. For example, genealogy, about our ancestors, or maybe biology, chemistry, artificial intelligence, of course, and so on. Because I think that the most important thing is not just to be the best computer technician, so programmer, but also have a wide range of knowledge about everything. Some basics about our history, culture, and so on.
Yes, and maybe, since you're already holding the microphone, if you could end this discussion with some tips. We heard about how those people produced their artworks, and especially in the old age of new media, it's still remarkable to see what kind of installations came out of the time where technology was way back there. Now we have so much new technology, new devices, which brings also new opportunities, or as we said that our panel is named, new perspectives. What would you say or recommend to the artists for the future artificial intelligence, is it, the resistance is futile, use it, or how should they deal with it? Because obviously with the discussion going on also in the artistic community, the opinions quite differ between people.
Yeah. I think that such technologies as artificial intelligence can make an innovator from you in one way, but if we don't have basic skills about our ancestors, we can't produce new media and new stuff. So I think that we need to read, to see old from the past, and also to produce something new, and be aware of technology, not just in our country, but also our region, of course.
Technology is a global thing, just as culture. Hey, if
so it's not a huge cable. Still alluding for the previous topic about producing and quick advancement of technology. So I also have an example, like 3 years ago, in times of Corona, produced an artwork that used a lot of proprietary software. And especially web-based software, and that one gets advanced quite fast, and the platforms themselves can sometimes just shut down the support. And so I was thinking about it. Maybe, of course, next time I could not use the same thing, but because it was early types of AI and this kind of using face filters, I was pretty much reliant on it, right? So my guess, or how would I approach next time, would be similar to that example, where I would have to document it, how exactly, what the concept and what the style was. For example, because it used also real-time data of cryptocurrency changes. At that time, it was probably, some kind of obscure cryptocurrency, which might, if it's going to be represented 20 years later, might not have the same context. So I would kind of write into the documentation the style, and then if it's going to be represented again, try to recreate it. I think that would be my best approach, because after the Corona, that specific app was cancelled, and I could not use it again.
Can I just respond really quickly? As a historian, I would encourage you, all of you, to document, because this process of restoration that we're describing, which is super cutting edge and interesting and creative, where you essentially reinvent your work every single time, that can't happen without you. I mean, it will happen without you, but you cannot imagine, from speaking from like the viewpoint of the archivists and the historians and the curators, the missing labor and the missing information that currently you're confronted with when you have a new media object that needs to be exhibited again. And if whoever you're dealing with is not asking you questions that are extremely technically detailed about what your process was, how you got to the idea, who was involved, where you got your stuff from, what it was that you were using exactly, code, everything. If they're not asking you those questions, then you need to supply those answers without being prompted. Because yes, documentation is everything. The framework does not really exist insofar as institutional frameworks are concerned, at least in Slovenia, as far as I know. But it does exist in other, so the Whitney Museum, for instance, I've been looking at their questionnaires. They do have, and they're publicly available, So if you just Google Whitney Museum New Media Art Questionnaire Curating, you will get like a 10-page document with the questions that people need to be asking you, and you need to be answering before you place something in a collection.
Just a small something to add to this process, of course. Also conceptualize, document and also conceptualize. I think it's really important that when you, as the artist, are clear about the concept of your work, then, you know, it's not so much anymore to interpretation. I mean, it is of other people later on and so on. Yes, it is, but document also your conceptualization. And maybe after some time, when you do other works, you reconceptualize in the new perspective what you did, what was your development. So these were the concept boards that I was showing that Dragan is using to really conceptualize all of his works. I think that's also very interesting, although the work then doesn't really, you know, you can't physically see it, yeah, okay.
Well, if there are no more questions, then I would like to thank all the four of our speakers and the audience for valuable contribution. Also, we can see here that there's still a lot of things to discuss here, some things that urgently have to take into consideration and to start with this process when we're talking about the documenting the heritage that already exists here in the terms of new media. So I'm pretty sure this is not the last time on Speculum Artium that we're dealing with this topic. We would be happy to continue, let's say, maybe on the next seminar. But for now, thank you everyone for participation, and nice evening to all of you.